Hello everyone, thanks a lot for tuning in. In this tutorial, we'll be going over some tried and true methods for creating magic beams I've developed and applied in both Marvel and DC projects. I'll be creating a very specific look, but with small tweaks here and there, you'll be able to easily apply what you've learned to create your own unique effects to whatever project you're working on. So with that, let's jump right in. So right off the bat, you can see that I've changed my desktop. One thing that I'd like to do as an effects artist is always have the geometry spreadsheet available, and I also like to have this floating parameter window that I can resize to allow me to view my node network a little bit better. So let's get into it by bringing in the geometry that we'll be using for this project. So I'm just going to paste these guys in, and you can see here there is our hero. He's got a staff, it's laying on the ground. We've got a villain's wand and the villain. You can see here that the scale is in centimeters, whereas Houdini uses meters. So one of the first things we need to do is we need to scale everything down. And we're going to scale it down by 0.1. And we're going to do this across all of them. Just to get an idea of what we're working with, I'm going to merge it all together. And this is just for visualization. We won't be looking at it like this for the entire project. So now this is in a much more manageable scale. And another thing I need to do is set the frame range. So the amount of animation I have for these guys, I just happen to know is 192 frames. So I'm going to set that. Now let's check this animation out. Okay. So we can see here that the effect isn't going to start until right about here. So I'd say probably around frame 1045 is when we want the beams to actually start shooting out from each of them. And so one thing that we need to do is we need to isolate the geometry that the beams are coming from. So that would be the staff and the wand. So first things first, we don't need all of the staff, we just need the end of the staff and the end of the wand, because that's where the beams are going to be coming from. So I'm going to go to this, and then I need to convert it from Alembic to a geometry. So then now what I need to do is I just need a center point at the tip of this staff. So I'm going to select these endpoints, and I'm just going to blast all those out and delete non-selected. So now we just have those. And a really quick, simple way of getting the center point of this is we can just drop a fuse. And if we increase the snap distance and then make sure that we keep or don't remove the unused points and degenerate points, then now you can see here that we have just one point, and that's from the very tip of the staff. So we're going to do the same thing with the wand. Again, we have to convert it. I'm going to select the tip. I'm going to blast those out, delete non-selected, and just going to copy this fuse over. And now we have a point for each end. So now what? Well, with a beam, we need geometry that connects from each point. And so a way to do that is first I'm going to drop a point wrangle, and we need each of these points to have an ID. Therefore, I'm just going to take ID equals ptnum. There's only one point, so ID is going to be 0. And I'm going to apply the same to here. And so what we can do now is we can merge these two. And we can create a curve that goes between them. So if we go to polygons and then we add a polygon by, so one thing that we want to do is we just want to be sure that it's connecting correctly. So we want to do it by attribute name ID. And there we'll know for sure that it's creating one curve for each point. Sometimes it can create multiple per points if you don't use the attribute name. So I just always make sure that I have an ID to each point, and that they're the same ID. They each now have the ID of 0, and so now it's connecting 0 to 0. So this is great. We got this curve, and if we look up here, we can see we've got ourselves a curve that will then act as our beam, and it's something that we can use to drive the animation of the beam. And one way that we're going to drive the animation is that this guy up here is going to be initially overpowering this guy at the bottom. So that means that the center point of this beam is probably going to be changing as he's overpowering and then being overpowered. One person's beam is going to eventually beat out the other one. We need to be able to control how that beam moves between the two of them. So with that, we're going to create a carve, which carves along the UV of this curve. And we can see here, if I control this, we can see this will be our center point of the beam where the two of the beams collide. And so I'm just going to make this red so that we know when we're looking in the network that this is how it's the node that we're animating on. So now that we have our center, we'll also just want to blast out just this center point. So now when I move this, we just have this point. And so from this point, we're going to create curves from this end to here and from this end to here. So now we have two separate beams that we can do. And we already have the endpoints of each of both the wand and the staff. So you see here, I've got that. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did before, where we're going to make sure that they both have the same ID. We can merge them together. And then we're going to do an add. Got polygons by group, attribute ID. And then we can just copy and paste this. Now if we merge these two, we can have an idea of what we're doing. And there you go. Now we have these two curves. They're each independent of each other. And now we can control how these beams are created. So what we can do now is we can start animating some things. So we can see here that what I was saying before is that I'd like to have the animation of this beam start around frame 1045. So I'm going to drop a carve. And so this carve, you can see here, is going the wrong way. We don't want to do it in first U. We want to do it in second U. So this starts out, we're shooting the beam. We want it to start at 1045. and probably go meet his other beam. We want them to collide probably around, I'd say 1049 if we look at the animation. So he just barely saves himself. So we'll do that. So the center beam right now is not in the correct spot. We want it to be much closer to him whenever the beams collide, so we'll do something like this. So he gets it out just in front of him, and that'll be our start point. So now we see here, shoots that beam out just in time to save himself. And then let's go create the other beam. Again, it's going in the wrong direction. We'll use second U. So he's going to start his beam ever so slightly sooner than the other guy. So we'll start that at 44. And then, again, they both collide at 49. So we'll do that. So let's just give this a look. I'm just going to play blast it really quick. Okay. That looks pretty cool. Yep. I think that looks good. So luckily, since we have this center point created, we don't need to do any other animation other than how we want these beams to go back and forth. So what I think would be the most dramatic thing is as these collide, let's say, I think it is a little bit too close to him, so let's say it's somewhere like here. And so as it hits, he's going to just barely be able to save himself and push against the power of our villain's beam. So it's going to get a bit closer to him over time. So we can do something like that. So then as it hits, he's trying to fight it off, and then starts pushing a bit more into it. So now we can move it closer to the center as they fight. And so eventually our hero will start overtaking him. And then by the end, he's really going to be winning. So we'll do something like that. So let's take another quick look with the flipbook. All right, let's give this a look. Okay, yeah, I think that's gonna work. I might need to tweak the animation a little bit towards the bottom, but right now I'm not really gonna worry about it.